Totally Football Show. Today, you Bodo believe it. After Norway's stellar Winter Olympics, fueled Cortina anyone, Bodo Glimt do Inter Olympics in Milan, knocking out the Nerazzurri 5-2. We salute Knudsen's men, discuss Inter's Bodo shaming, and move on to the rest of Tuesday's Champions League games, from Norseman to Horseman with Newcastle Qarabag. There's some Bayer Olympiacos and Atletico Bruges too. Plus, thoughts on Monday night's Man United win away at Everton. All that and more in this Totally Football Show. Wednesday, the 25th of February, it's a brand new Totally Football Show. An extra one, because it's a Champions League midweek. Got Duncan Alexander back in the studio. Hi, Duncan.
Hi, James.
Lovely to see you. Mark Carey's with us as well.
Morning, James.
Morning to you, Mark. We've got Martin Sleipnes as well, very shortly from Milan, after Tuesday's extraordinary events at San Siro between Bodo Glimt and Inter. Crikey. I'm sorry, Mark. You were assigned...
We'll get on to
Leverkusen, Olympiacos. I'm not sure that we will.
Yeah, maybe we won't. That is a very good point. I drew the short straw voluntarily as well. I drew that short straw. Well, it's because I watched the first leg and I thought it'd be nice to see how the second leg unfolds. There's still something riding on it. It wasn't a scoreline that was...
Pharmaceutical products produced by Bayer. You took one tablet and you wanted the second, just to make sure.
Just in case.
And it sent you to sleep.
It did. It honestly did. We might get onto it later.
Okay.
Very brief.
There were 2 shots in the course of the 90 minutes.
2 shots on target. That is pretty much the only thing I was willing to say on it.
Okay. All right. Then.
Let's get into the more fun stuff.
Okay. Well, you did at least before that have the 5 goals in the game in Madrid between Atletico and Bruges. Atletico running up 4-1 winners. We'll get into that soon enough. Newcastle, on your other screen, 3-2 victors against Qarabag after going 2 goals up in the first 6 minutes again.
Yeah, again, we can come on to that. I think that the pattern of the game actually followed what you'd expect for someone who is 8-2 up on aggregate after about 6 minutes.
Fair enough. And the other match, well, as mentioned, Bodo Glimt continuing their incredible campaign, knocking out last year's finalist Inter in pretty humiliating fashion, 2-1 Tuesday night, 5-2 on aggregate. Bodo Glimt will now face either Man City or Sporting in the last 16. They've already beaten Man City, of course, once already this year.
Yeah, only the thawing of the Arctic ice they have to fear now. Well, it helps, doesn't it?
Do you think as the season goes on, because it's going to get warmer, that one of the main things, not necessarily the USP of Bodo, because they're a fantastic side.
Can they do it on a warm night?
Do you know what I mean? It feels the opposite.
It's the opposite of Game of Thrones, because obviously winter is coming. Winter is disappearing for Bodo, and they're running out of time.
Yeah. Genuine consideration.
Well, if anyone was Thor on Tuesday night, it was Inter. We'll get on to the reasons why next. At San Siro, it finished 2-1 after Alessandro Bastoni got one back for Inter, but 5-2 on aggregate for the Norwegians. Inter dominated the first half before Manuel Akanji, wearing a big head bandage, and possibly the Italian papers a little bit concussed, laying the ball off inexplicably for Jens Peter Hauge, the former Milan player, to get his 6th goal of this Champions League campaign. The second goal then was an absolute stunner, no?
I mean, most of the goals that Bodo have scored in both legs have been really clinically finished. This was a completely different sort of flow to the game in the second leg to the first because of the way that the scoreline was, but especially the second one, it was so clinically finished. But some of the intricate play in the first leg as well to unlock Inter's defence was excellent. They did have to play a bit more with their backs to the wall, as you'd expect. It felt quite clear that Inter needed to score first, obviously didn't. And it was more of a stay in a slightly lower block, make sure that you just don't concede too many chances, even though across the whole game, Inter had 30 shots in total.
Right.
7 on target, so probably could have scored a couple more than they did.
They hit the woodwork 3 times across the 2 legs, but the absence of a sense of danger was one of the notable things of what was in many regards one of the all-time great Champions League knockout stage upsets, but it didn't even feel like a surprise, Duncan.
It was a sort of strange atmosphere. Like it was clearly a big game for Inter, but the fans just sort of seemed resigned from quite early on. There was not much jumping up and down and, building of pressure. And whereas there's, you could tell quite early that it was a sort of game where the team who needed to score 2 goals were probably not going to do so because, as you say, the woodwork was hit, chances were wasted, and it just felt very inevitable. And that made it quite an interesting game in the second half because, you know, when Bodo went 1 and then 2 up, it just felt like, yeah, here we go. And even when it's pulled one back with Bastoni, it was too late by that point. And yeah, it was a strange game, but memorable.
Okay. There are many metrics by which you can discuss the supposed chasm between these two sides. The Athletic's Chris Weatherspoon mentions wage bills. Inter's more than 10 times that of Bodo Glimt. Nick Miller points out that the last time Inter won the Champions League in 29-10, Bodo Glimt were finishing 6th in the Norwegian second division. There's the fact that the population of Bodo could fit into San Siro almost twice over. Mm-hmm. And Opta pointing out that Bodo's triumph means it's the first time since 1972 that a team from outside Europe's top 5 leagues has had 4 consecutive victories against teams from those top 5 leagues. The team back in 1972 to do it were Ajax, who went on to win the whole thing. Well, one man who was doing lots of jumping up and down at San Siro on Tuesday night was Martin Sleipnes of the Enka Severing podcast, who joins us now actually from the streets of Milan. Martin, hello, good morning.
Good morning, hello. Sorry, my voice is a bit off today. It was a lot of screaming yesterday, and to be honest, I almost teared up now when you went through all the statistics and insane facts about the achievements that Glimt have done.
Martin, it is extraordinary. Another week, another greatest night ever.
Yeah, it's getting expensive, this, for me and for all my fellow Norwegian friends. It's a long trip for us to take every time we have to do this. One banner at the stadium yesterday said I had to sell the boat to get here. So we're extremely happy, and this has been one of the best nights of my life, I think.
Along with all the other ones, and who knows what the next few months might entail, Sporting or Man City awaiting in the last 16. We were talking about the atmosphere at San Siro. You were there with, about 3,000 fellow Bodo fans. What was that like?
It was, it's one of the weirdest games I've seen away with, or home with Bodo Glimt, because the tension was so high, and everyone understood slowly but surely that Inter, they aren't going to score 3 goals, let alone 5 when they went 2-0 down. So it was the ugliest Glimt game I've seen for maybe 10 years, and I wasn't scared even at the end of the game. So it was a super surreal experience for me. And I think everyone felt the same thing. Inter wasn't going to score. They made the 1 goal and could have scored 1 or 2 more, but they were never going to beat us.
Well, one thing that's really striking about this, beyond the sizes of the two clubs, is that until about a month ago, Bodo had never won a Champions League match. Bodo Glimt were lying 32nd in the table with only a fractional chance of even making it to the playoff stage. They've now won 4 straight matches, as mentioned, in a row. But against these teams, Man City, Inter, 3-1 at Bodo Glimt, and now 2-1 at San Siro. 2-1 the victory at Atletico Madrid as well. So it's not a plastic pitch, the motive behind this. We talked about the fact that Bodo are in the in the off-season at the moment, so these midweek games are the only ones they have to face. But what other reasons can we find for this, not just their form, but the way that the form has turned around since January?
It's an excellent question, and a question I think every top club in Europe will try to answer, because they're going to look at Bodo Glimt and see what Bodo Glimt have done, see at how they set up the team, and going to copy it. And it's hard for me to understand that no huge European team are going to go after our coach now, because if you scribbled over the name Bodo Glimt and saw the results, if you include the 2-2 away against Dortmund, I think maybe you would guess it was PSG or Bayern that had won those matches. And even Bayern fans and PSG fans will be satisfied with it and happy with it. So it's impossible to explain. And I'm lots of words.
Plenty of words have been spent on this subject. Thierry Henry on Tuesday night was talking about how you play as a team. You, in the past, have mentioned the team's philosophy about caring about the performance over the result and this lack of pressure that comes from that. Nick Miller, in a piece in The Athletic, also talks about the psychological work done by one of Knudsen's assistants, a former fighter pilot, who gets the team together and the way that they address any mistakes that they do make in games.
Yeah, his name is Bjørn Mansverk. He's their kind of therapist, if I could use that word. I think he's been key to overcoming the scary situations. Sorry about the beeping. It's in traffic in Italy is sometimes heavy, but I think he makes the players he lets the players go out on the pitch and not be afraid of whatever comes. So they play without pressure on themselves. Of course, sometimes they feel that pressure, but I think it must be very easy for them to never feel that they're going to lose, if you understand. I think that's the feeling they play with. So they can do passes and turns and try crazy things. And it's okay, because that's the plan, and do it again if you fail, and do it again if you fail then. So they just try and succeed eventually. That's the philosophy.
All right. Well, they're a joy to watch. At what point, though, do you stop being underdogs, I wonder, with Man City, who you've already beaten this year, and Sporting, or Sporting awaiting in the last 16?
Well, I think that's Norwegian media is obviously all over this. How far can Glimt go? Can they win the Champions League? And I mean, they are beating the winning finalist and losing finalist from the 3 last finals of the Champions League. I think on any given day, they can beat anyone, as they have proved. And they could go far. If they draw good, they can go far.
It sounds like there's going to be some more boats sold in Bodo. Martin, what would you rather have, Manchester or Lisbon for the next one?
Well, I went to and saw the Manchester United away game in the Europa League last season, so I would love a trip to Lisbon. That would be my cup of tea this time.
Excellent. Martin, I wish you the very best of luck with Friday's draw and events beyond that. Many, many thanks to you for joining us and to your team for giving us so much enjoyment over the last month. Magnificent.
Cheers.
Martin Sleipnes of the Servering podcast. Duncan.
Yeah, I was just looking at the power ranking numbers from my old friends, Opta. So 9 years ago, Bodo were around 1600th in the world.
1600?
Yeah.
1,600?
Yeah. They're now 40th, wow. Which is the highest ever position. They're currently in between West Ham United and Como, as many people might have guessed. But I mean, they're an exalted company. They're above teams like Galatasaray, Villarreal.
Right.
So, yeah, it really is a meteoric rise.
Well, speaking of Galatasaray, they had their own 5-2, albeit not on aggregate, so far at least, against an Italian side last week when they beat Juve by that scoreline. The second leg coming up on Wednesday. Atalanta will also be in action on Wednesday night. They're 2-0 down from their first leg against Borussia Dortmund. And as such, with Inter's exit, there's every chance that we won't have any Italian side in even the last 16. As you can imagine, there's been a certain amount of alarm about this in the Italian papers. No excuses was the big headline on the Gazzetta. There's a piece inside from Arrigo Sacchi talking about alarm bells ringing. I think it's the same piece from last year and possibly not the one before, because at that point, I don't know if you remember, they did that advert with Fabio Capello in La Scala saying Calcio is back. This is 3 seasons ago? 22, 23, when they had a team in each of the finals, and they made a big thing of the return of Serie A to being a real player in in European football. But you look at it now, Napoli, the champions, the Italian champions, didn't even make the playoff stages. Inter, the team who are currently 10 points clear at the top of the league, knocked out by Bodo Glimt, and possibly Juve to follow. 5-2 the scoreline last week, ahead of the match in Turin tonight.
There's always Fiorentina in the Conference League.
Right. Bologna and Roma as well.
Yeah. But if you look at the current standings in the coefficient, and obviously the score for a country is divided by the number of teams in that remaining in the competition. So it's tricky with so many teams heading out. Italy are now below the likes of Portugal. They could even be overtaken by Poland this season. So if anyone was wondering whether they were going to get a bonus Champions League spot, I think that ship has sailed. Maybe back to Norway.
It's hard to put your finger on why it is, though, that they've really struggled in Europe this season. I mean, we speak about it from an English perspective to say, I've been on this podcast to say that with the Premier League versus the Champions League, when the game's a bit more open for English sides, they prefer it a little bit because it's become a little bit more attritional, if you like, in the Premier League. And I don't know if it's something to do with the difference between Serie A and the Champions League. I
think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of that. But the biggest thing is speed.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we saw this at San Siro. They looked so slow. Yeah. They had all the possession you could want, but they looked so slow and so bereft of ideas and confidence in their finishing. I know they were missing Lautaro Martinez, but everybody has players out from time to time.
Yeah.
And the contrast with the way that Bodo Glimt attacked their chances with verve and elan.
That second goal, especially the counter-attack, the way that they just sliced through them, it didn't seem like it was too much of an issue to be able to do it in the first place when it's the team who's 10 points clear in Serie A, as you say, which is so interesting. I think the final thing on Bodo Glimt as well is just how much of a good story it is for the Champions League this season, especially when you contrast it with Qarabag. It's not even a spoiler for what's coming next. They really struggled against Newcastle, such a terrible scoreline on aggregate, and you think, is this league phase working? I know you guys have discussed this before and had differing opinions, and you think, okay, well, is it diluting the quality of all of the teams getting to this stage, adding an extra 2 games for the playoff? The Qarabag Newcastle game is almost an example of it not working so well when there's such a kind of contrast in quality.
Although it was a lot of fun for Newcastle.
It was a lot of fun, yeah. They scored a lot of goals.
I don't mind a big blowout match.
Yeah, it was fun for the neutral, but kind of the overall feeling of the Champions League. And that argument doesn't stand up across the whole competition because Bodo have done what they've done against
Would Bodo have made it through to the last 16 had they been in an old-fashioned group phase?
That's the question. Exactly. That.
No.
Yeah.
No, because after 6 games...
If you're enjoying them, then that means you automatically enjoy the new format.
Yeah.
Well,
no further questions. Although I would argue, this year, I'm finding this round, I said this to Mark earlier, a bit strange.
Right.
Like it feels a bit non-canon. I think almost like, Sorloth got a hat-trick for Atletico, but almost like it shouldn't really count because it's knockout. It's the knockouts, but it's not really the knockouts yet,
it's a bit like extra time in a match, not... sorry, it's a bit like a penalty shootout.
Yeah, a little bit.
Goals in a penalty shootout, something like that.
So enjoy the games.
Not like that,
but just don't write them down.
Okay. Don't write them down. And don't write off... Norway in anything relating to Milan and Northern Italy, I think we can say at the moment.
Fair.
Just seen them had an absolutely extraordinary Winter Olympics. 41 medals they picked up. And it wasn't long ago, when was it? November, that the national side went to San Siro and themselves beat Italy 4-1, as a result of which, along with all of Serie A's other problems, their national side is very much in doubt for the upcoming World Cup. Northern Ireland awaits in a playoff in March. Very good. Well, you touch on Newcastle Qarabag. Let's get onto that and the other Tuesday night games next. Newcastle 3, Qarabag 2 on Tuesday night. Eddie Howard made 7 changes from their Premier League defeat away to Man City at the weekend, but didn't slow them down. They were still 2-0 up inside 6 minutes, as mentioned before, by which point, not surprisingly, they took the foot off the gas a little bit. And Qarabag came back into it, but they go through in fine style. What's the aggregate, Mark?
The aggregate overall was 9-3.
9-3.
Yeah. Which I think Qarabag did come out of it with a small amount of credit, especially considering the first leg. As in they gave it a go in Newcastle.
Right.
I think, as I said before, the way that the game kind of ebbed and flowed and Qarabag had a better second half, if you like, and the intensity dropped from Newcastle. That was to be expected,
right?
Because they've made plenty of changes. They knew that the game was over. The only thing that they could have probably done is just kept the entertainment level high and looked after the ball for long periods. But Qarabag almost showed the form, or a little bit of the performance that they had that beat Benfica. They beat Copenhagen. They drew with Chelsea, of course. And that was kind of the question that was asked in the first leg, to say, like, where was any of that performance when they're 5-0 down at half time to Newcastle? The quality was so poor in that first leg. So they came out with a little bit of credit, but 2 goals in the first 6 minutes. And it was interesting, actually, that with the first 2 goals, or the second goal rather, in this game, was much like the first leg, whereby Qarabag kicked off, and then within seconds again, I think they were still showing the replay, even within seconds Newcastle went and scored again. Is that, you know, sort of the phrase that you're never at your most vulnerable than when you've scored a goal.
Right.
It feels like Qarabag kind of have the opposite of it. Never at their most vulnerable than when they've just conceded a goal and they have possession again, God forbid, and then they go and give it away again. And Newcastle's press was good again.
Yep.
Bit of credit for them, but it was laughable at times.
Presser-in-chief Anthony Gordon was not in the starting lineup, although he did come on. He features in a piece you put together this week, Mark, about acceleration over... Go on, you tell me.
Yeah, no, on-ball acceleration. So he's really good.
On-ball acceleration.
Yeah, and he's really good in his intensity off the ball as well. And Eddie Howe said that in interviews, and I included that within the piece, his energy. But this was using data from Gradient Sports, and they look at, across different distances, and I did this over 3 metre distance, which players are the ones who can stand up their opposition defender at a walking pace and then burst past them at pace and just get that half a yard.
And this is in the Premier League?
This is in the Premier League, yes,
right.
Granted. Jeremy Doku, unsurprisingly, comes out very highly there in terms of the volume of doing that.
Right.
But Anthony Gordon is high in both the volume in which he does it and the speed in which he does it to get that separation from the opposition defender. And because he's playing in more of a central position now as well as being able to play on the left wing, in those small spaces when there's a lot of bodies around him, it's a real advantage for him to just be able to get that separation. And I gave an example of the assist against Tottenham Hotspur, where he did that from more of a central area, and then plenty of examples of him doing it on the left wing as well. But yeah, he was rested last night. He came on, but his job was pretty much done from the first leg already.
Doku and Gordon, I think, would be expected to figure highly by that metric. Were there any surprising players in there?
One that was surprising to me was maybe a lesser heralded player because he's playing for a team who aren't doing very well, is Hugo Bueno, left back for Wolves. And I looked into this, he actually has the most completed crosses in open play per 90 minutes of any player in the Premier League, but he's kind of got that ability to, again, almost as you imagine it, a fullback getting to being on the touchline, standing up their opposition, it'd probably be a forward who's defending, and then stopping and then just getting that extra yard. He's got that little burst of pace to then cross it in, and he crosses at a high volume as well. So you see a lot, I was speaking with some colleagues about this yesterday, a lot of players who are still really good players, but playing for teams who are struggling, almost guaranteed to be relegated. I think he's a good example of a player who other teams should be looking at when Wolves get relegated.
Andy Robertson gambit.
Exactly. Gini Wijnaldum as well within that. So I think he'd be one that people should be keeping an eye on when they get relegated.
Less Hugo Boss, more Hugo Cross, you could say.
That's very nice, Duncan.
I thought they played young Alex Murphy, to give him his official name, at left back, but the rest of the team was pretty strong.
Yeah.
Which I thought was disrespectful to the Premier League for me.
Well, they got Everton at the weekend, and for Anthony Gordon, of course, a special match if he's back in the starting lineup. After that, in the last 16, they'll get either Chelsea or Barcelona. Barcelona, who won at St James's Park 2-1? 3-1? 2-1. 2-1 back on the opening day.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
All those months ago. Chelsea, curiously, are actually scheduled to be playing them on March 14th, which would be in between the 2 legs of the last 16. So if they do get Chelsea in Friday's draw, they'll be facing them 3 times in a row.
There could be a lot of this on the way. If Arsenal and Man City get through to the quarterfinals, they'll face up. And with the Carabao Cup final and the league game, it's like 4 meetings within sort of 3 weeks.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Please fix your computer.
Yeah.
I think Newcastle would fancy themselves against Barcelona or Chelsea, but it's kind of one of those where it's like on their day, they could.
Yeah.
And this is where I think it's interesting, and I did a piece on this, as Duncan will know, that I think there's something to be said about teams putting more eggs in fewer baskets, if you like, and actually realising, okay, we might not be able to get enough points in the Premier League to maybe qualify for a certain position, but what do the fans want? They want more excitement, maybe in the Champions League, in cups, knowing maybe where they stand in the food chain. I think they could maybe rest a few players in the Premier League game leading up to this next Champions League game, and then they'll have more physical intensity to be able to play in the way that Eddie Howe likes them to play.
Right.
I think their issue this season has been the inconsistency with which they've played has been because they've not been able to keep up that physical intensity. One game they're the team that you would imagine that they can be, the other they're just a little bit off it. So if you can almost like charge the batteries and make sure that you're putting everything into the Champions League game, I think that they could punish either Barcelona or Chelsea.
Approach.
Kind of.
Although I guess you talk about eggs in baskets, the bean counters are more concerned with getting back into the Champions League, aren't they? So.
Well, they are currently lying 11th of fully 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, quite a few, 9 points off 5th.
I mean, we'll know more on Friday, but Newcastle could possibly, if they did do well, play Chelsea in the last 16, Spurs or Liverpool in the quarters, and then Arsenal in the semis, which for a continental competition would feel a little bit underwhelming. Although they did have to go to Qarabag, so I guess it evens that out. But.
Yeah.
But you'd fancy them against all of on their day.
On their day. Very good. It was Atletico's day on Tuesday as they stormed past Club Brugge 4-1. Atletico took the lead through Alexander Sorloth. Then Bruges looked like making a game of it. They equalised through Ordonez, who just he was off injured. This was held to be significant, the fact that he was off injured when Atletico set up for the corner, and then he came on and there wasn't anyone marking him. And
back post finish.
Yeah,
I think this was interesting because, I mean, you couldn't just shake off Bruges until the second half, really, when Atleti sort of pulled away a little bit. It was a theme of the whole tie, really. In the first leg, Atleti went 2-0 up and then it was brought back to 2-2. Then they went 3-2 up, then it was brought back to 3-3, etc. You can carry that on until the end of the first half where they thought they were pulling away and Bruges just wouldn't go down. In a way. So I think the fact that they stayed in the game for so long was credit to Bruges. They've obviously got some really exciting players, but it kind of ebbed and flowed. There was no one who was really taking authority in the game until the second half.
Right.
Then they scored early on from a Cardoso finish, which was really well taken from the edge of the area, just sort of slotted it bottom corner.
The third goal, Sorloth's second, was really nice as well. Sorloth with a slightly mishit pass to Ademola Lookman, who's in such great form. Lovely shot of Diego Simeone saluting him when he came off at the end with a huge grin for the recently arrived player. So Lookman, and then Lookman does a little 1-2 with Griezmann, and then the ball comes back to Sorloth and away it goes. Sad, well, not sad, but interesting to see that Antoine Griezmann's currently negotiating to make a move to Orlando City.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. I don't have any sort of further news on it other than it's sort of sad for European football because he's been such an incredible player for so long now. He didn't start this game, but yeah, even that example with Lookman, just such intricate passes, one-touch passing, he can unlock defences with that left foot. So yeah, it'll be a shame.
Hear the phrase "look, man" in America. So
that's true.
Fair enough. I'm sad to see Bruges go out. They were my kind of hipster, not Bodo Glimt team.
Right.
I mean, their home games were like reliably brilliant all the way through this tournament. So yeah, it's a shame.
Credit to them. Credit to Sorloth, who's now picked up 5 goals in 2 matches for Atletico Madrid. Free scoring. Atletico Madrid, it's not long ago, they beat Barcelona in the Copa del Rey 4-0. We've got the second leg of that coming up. When's the second leg? Must be at the start of March, I think.
Yeah. It feels like they're another example, a bit like Newcastle, where on their day they can be really comprehensive, but you're just not always entirely sure this season which one you're going to get.
Right.
But yeah, no, they pulled away fantastically. A word for the third goal for Sorloth as well, which was just a comprehensive volley.
Right.
Really clinical finish to get the hat-trick again at the back post. His first one, by the way, was, I think, just openly a mistake from Simon Mignolet, from an angle and far enough out that Mignolet should have easily saved it. So the first one a little bit lucky, but second one, intricate play and a good finish. Third one was he was obviously confident at that point and just slotted it first time.
Spurs or Liverpool await Atletico Madrid in the last 16. They've already faced Liverpool back in the league phase when they lost 3-2 at Anfield on a feisty night for Diego Simeone. He received a 1-game ban for an altercation with home supporters. Leverkusen, Olympiacos 0-0. Mark?
I do feel that to a certain extent I've maybe said all I can say on it, other than I was a little bit disappointed with the fight from Olympiacos. It was 2-0. It wasn't a scoreline that couldn't be retrieved. They'd already beaten Leverkusen.
Dangerous scoreline, many feel.
Dangerous scoreline, correct. They'd beaten Leverkusen 2-0 in the league phase, so they knew that they could kind of unlock them to a certain extent, and it didn't feel like they laid enough gloves on them, if I can use that phrase. There was only 2 shots on target, 1 each from both sides, which kind of tells you everything that you need to know, I think.
It's Arsenal or Bayern next for Leverkusen. Should Arsenal be concerned?
I don't think so. Leverkusen have been quite mixed in their form across the whole season. They, in these games at least, they lacked a bit of bite right at that sharp end. They get into some good areas. I really like the way that Leverkusen play. You can still see the kind of the Xabi Alonso style of one-touch play, making angles. It's really intricate at times, and it is quite aesthetically pleasing. But they did just lack a little bit of bite right at the top end. And you think the team, the quality of Arsenal, they should be able to shrug them off quite easily.
Right. They've been through some managers since him, Xabi Alonso, of course, Erik ten Hag with that brilliant spell at the start of this season, but now Kasper Hjulmand in charge. You know what? They're another team who on their day. It's true. Good. That's all of Tuesday's action. Wednesday, of course, awaits, and we'll have more on all of that in Thursday morning's Totally Football show. But there's other midweek stuff to talk about, including the Monday night Everton Man United game. We'll get onto that next. North of the border this weekend, Mark. There's an Old Firm game, 12 o'clock Sunday. Rangers host Celtic. Scottish Premiership leaders Hearts the day before, Saturday, as we know it, will be hosting Aberdeen. Now, if they win that, the margins are going to be huge. They're going to be 7 points ahead of Rangers and fully 9 ahead of reigning champions Celtic before that Old Firm matchup. Celtic do have a game in hand, but it's very much billed as a lose this and you're out of the title picture.
Well, with Hearts, obviously, because they are part owned by Tony Bloom, I like to keep an eye on them from an analytics perspective at the very least, to know that the process is still working and you can still find these players from further flung leagues and do well and try and, I was going to say, beat the duopoly, I suppose, as they are doing. They came out of the blocks really well, didn't they, Hearts? And then I thought, because Celtic almost caught them, I think they were level on points, and then they played each other, I believe. And I thought that was kind of the optimism over. Aberdeen had a chance last season where they were flirting with the idea of pulling away, and that kind of fell away. But it's nice to see that it's still on to win the title.
For now, it is still on. Meantime, in the Premier League, Monday saw Man United picking up their 4th win in 5 matches.
Well, there's a nice link there, isn't there? Because the last teams who weren't Rangers or Celtic to win the Scottish top flight were managed by Alex Ferguson. And Manchester United have not won the league since they're managed by Alex Ferguson. So he's got a lot to answer for. But, United ground out a 1-0 win. After an aerial bombardment from Everton.
Well, it was a 1-0 win. Benjamin Sesko with the goal. But it was their goalkeeper who got the Man of the Match award afterwards for his incredibly brave performance. Yeah,
he just had to put his big Belgian arms in the air and catch a lot of balls, and he did it really well.
What exactly were Everton doing?
Well, they were floating it on top of him. So they weren't like whipped corners. It was more of a sort of just put the ball and drop it down.
Right, but there was also a certain amount of physical attention to Lammens.
I was going to say, accompanied by many, many players
jostling
in the 6-yard box.
There was jostling.
It's being termed the meat wall now, isn't it? In terms of just creating enough bodies around. You're not necessarily blocking, you're not necessarily pushing, you're not doing anything you shouldn't, but you're just creating enough bodies and just taking enough space that there isn't the opportunity to move around. And Lammens dealt with it really well, didn't he? And it wasn't just catching, wasn't it? It was punching as well, to know that he couldn't actually get 2 hands on it, climb above the Everton players. But
yeah, his 6 catches and punches in the 6-yard box is the most by a goalkeeper in the Premier League this season.
Really?
Yeah. So he was put under the microscope and he came out well. And I think he's probably, of all the United signings last summer, all of whom the 3 attackers combined for the goal, he's the one that's maybe got the least attention.
Okay, but it's maybe the most influential.
Yeah, I think,
given their travails at that position.
He's been a transformative figure, given the number of games in the last few seasons where they've maybe had some control and then thrown it away because of a goalkeeping error. He's brought a sort of calmness and I don't know, just he kind of exudes a relaxation that seems to help the team.
I think it helps that he's not being asked to play out from the back quite in the same way that in seasons gone by elite goalkeepers have. I think the way that the Premier League's gone now is that going long is actually encouraged, not just accepted. So he's just focusing on doing the things that typical goalkeepers can do. Punch it, catch it, kick it, save it.
He's top for expected goals prevented, XGP, per 90 minutes in the Premier League. On Monday night, Everton had 10 corners to United's 1. They also played 35 crosses compared to United's 6. That's quite Moyes' United legacy. But they only completed 5 of those 35. Lammens claimed 2 of them and punched away another 4. Crikey. And he picked up his 3rd clean sheet in 6 matches.
I think as well, just having a settled side, whether it is obviously goalkeeper, back 4, but the whole team, I think it's been a theme since Carrick's come in that he's really tried to minimise the amount of changes that have been made. He's had the opportunity to do that a little bit more because there's been fewer injuries, of course. But
I mean, they're playing a 40-game season, which is remarkably low. And I think United would get at least 3rd. I think, given the nip and tuck in the title race,
they're only 3 points behind Villa in 3rd.
Yeah, I think they'll overtake Villa. I could see them closing in on City and or Arsenal.
I was looking at their fixtures as well.
Arsenal's a big shout.
Yeah, Arsenal's a big shout. But if I think Arsenal and City are both flawed and will drop points. So if United just keep plugging away, they've got a good basis to build on. And the only thing there is whether, it's funny, they're playing Crystal Palace this weekend, and obviously Oliver Glasner is a manager who's been linked with the United job.
Has he?
And it's like the more Michael Carrick impresses, they're coming to that decision that they got to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is, do you turn an impressive interim manager into the permanent manager? But it's a nice problem to have.
Indeed, and a subject no doubt will be touched on further as we reach the end of the season. As for Everton, they lay down in 9th place. They're winless in 6 at the Hill Dickinson. But their away form has kept them up in the top half of the table. 2
things when clubs move stadiums. 1, they start dropping points because they're not used to it. And now that didn't happen at the start of the season for Everton. They actually got off to quite a good start. But it's good to see the laws of football kick in and this is actually happening. That's good.
They're not used to it in terms of knowing where the goals are?
Just like the whole experience, I think. It's that your home advantage of knowing every inch of the pitch and the dressing room, it's not there. And now... And I think Monday Night Football showed a lot of teams when they moved, Arsenal and various others. I think Derby were the only team that moved stadiums and actually improved. And Derby, as we know, are statistical outliers, very much so. The other thing about new stadiums is the pitches take a long time to bed in. And that game on Monday night, it wasn't close to being abandoned, but the water on the pitch, there was a couple of points where the ball was not running freely. So it's just nice to see. You can't outrun the laws of football in new stadiums. So
don't try. Everton this weekend are away at Newcastle. Oh yeah, we mentioned that before. So they are. They're away at Newcastle. Very good. We'll have more thoughts on the weekend's games in store in Thursday morning's Totally Football Show. But that brings us to the end of today's edition. Many thanks to Mark and Duncan. To Martin Sleipnes, of course. Nominative determinism is Martin Sleipnes there in Milan. And to Grayson and producer Charlie in the booth, and you, listener, thanks so much for being with us. Back tomorrow if you fancy it on Thursday. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.